Senator from Ohio.
President, I rise to urge my colleagues to support the budget resolution immediately after the infrastructure vote tomorrow. I'm particularly glad to see the presiding officer and the chair today. Earlier, I spoke on this floor about the infrastructure bill and her efforts, Senator Duckworth from Illinois, her efforts to ensure disabled access transit stops. We still have far too many transit stops in this country in big cities like hers in Chicago and mine in Cleveland and Philadelphia and New York and all over that are not accessible, and that's got to be our mission. I chair the Banking, Housing, Urban Affairs Committee. Most people call it just the Banking Committee. In reality, it's the Housing, Banking, and Transit Committee, and that's our responsibility to move in the right direction. And we are moving there rapidly, and I thank Senator Duckworth for her work on that. I want to talk not long. I know that Senator Cardin is awaiting and has been patient, and I believe that Senator Inhofe might be here too. This week we've moved forward on a bill to provide critical investments in transportation infrastructure. I'm glad we're doing that. The next step is to address housing. Nothing is more important than housing. As chair of the Banking Housing Committee, I've held hearings about housing needs across the country. This committee, called Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, most refer to it as Senate Banking. It's been mostly about Wall Street in the past, not nearly enough about housing. Those issues are changing. I know Senator Cardin, not just in Baltimore, but in Western Maryland, everywhere, as in urban Ohio and rural Ohio, how important housing is. We hear repeatedly about the shortage of affordable housing, about wide disparities in access to home ownership. This isn't just about a few coastal cities. We heard from mayors in Akron, Ohio, in Bozeman, Montana, Senator Tester's state, in Tempe, Arizona, about their housing needs. Their markets vary. In Bozeman, home prices are up 50%. It's almost impossible for young families to find a place to live. In Akron, home values are sometimes too low to find financing, and banks tell us they can't make a profit on on selling a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 mortgage on a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 house. Their issues are different, but all three mayors told us they need the federal government to be a better partner in helping to invest in their housing and in their communities. Without housing investment, there cannot be economic growth. It's because housing, by any real definition, housing is infrastructure. Where you live determines so much about your life. Where your kids go to school, how far you have to go to work, what kind of jobs you get, determines where you do your grocery shopping. Do you have access to fresh fruits and vegetables? Whether your kids are exposed, as they are in far too many old neighborhoods, whether it's Appalachia, Southern Illinois, or whether in Ohio, or whether it's Cleveland or Chicago, kids are exposed too often to hazardous lead or mold. We saw over the past year that housing certainly affects our health. People's paychecks have not kept up with the cost of living, particularly the cost of rent. Senator Sanders earlier today, and this was before the pandemic, what he was talking about, that 25% of American renters pay more than half their income in rent. One thing goes wrong in their lives. Their car breaks down, their child gets sick, they miss 3 days of work because of a minor injury, and everything turns upside down for them. And this is even more of a problem, of course, for Black and Latino renters, little left over each month for food and medication, let alone saving. It's not just renters. Today, more than 1 in 5 homeowners still pay more than 1/3 of their income in rent. And the Black ownership rate, this is pretty unbelievable. The Black ownership rate is as low as it was when, in 1968, this body finally passed open housing, finally passed fair housing. The first Secretary of HUD after we passed a fair housing law was Senator Romney's father, George Romney. As hard as he tried, partly because the president, his boss, followed a Southern strategy, did very little in the end, could accomplish very little for housing equality. We're the wealthiest country in the world. We have 500,000 people, including 100,000 children, without a place to stay on a given night. The budget resolution on the floor tomorrow will finally make the investment we need to help more families find and afford a place that they can call home. Think of the word home. helps us provide funding to make critical repairs to our nation's public housing, to make it more sustainable, to save families money, to reduce harmful effects on our climate, helps provide affordable places for families and seniors to rent, including in rural areas, helping more families become first-time homeowners. It will help communities invest in their neighborhoods, including brown and black communities who've been left out of our nation's recovery, it will make their homes more resilient in the face of changing climate. It will make communities will help have housing and transit investments that work together to bring down the cost of daily commutes to reduce harmful effects on our climate. With the resolution before us tomorrow, we have an opportunity to make people's lives better, to give local economies the chance to grow. We can expand access to affordable rentals. We'll make it easier to purchase a home. We'll put tradespeople to work in good-paying, often union jobs, building housing, making it safer, making it resilient. I urge my colleagues to support this long overdue investment in our homes, in our communities, and in our workers. Madam President, I yield the floor.